Tonight, we go under the knife and into the world of nip, tuck, without the need of a 15 blade or a consultation. But first, if you enjoy this cozy tale, please don't forget to make an incision on that like button, or make it a complete transformation and hit the notification bell as well. It helps others discover the channel and join our community of weary dreamers. And please, let me know in the comments if you have an adverse reaction to the anesthesia and this video doesn't help you sleep. I'd love to hear any suggestions for improving future content. But for now, count back from 10 and enjoy tonight's procedure into the glamorous yet disturbing world of nip, tuck. The small aircraft lurched through another pocket of turbulence, and Sean McNamara tightened his grip on the armrests. Beside him, Christian Troy hadn't even bothered to look up from the medical journal he was flipping through, seeming entirely unperturbed by the fact they were bouncing through the air in what felt like a glorified tin can. "You're looking a little green there, partner," Christian said without glancing over, turning another page with a casual flick. "I told you to take the Dramamine." Sean exhaled slowly. "I'm fine. Just wondering if we're making a mistake." This finally drew Christian's attention. He closed the journal and gave Sean his practiced, charismatic smile. 2 weeks in Guatemala, helping the unfortunate, burnishing our humanitarian credentials. It's brilliant PR. The society wives in Miami will be fighting to get on our surgery schedule when we get back. Sean frowned. After nearly 20 years as partners in their plastic surgery practice, Christian's naked self-interest shouldn't surprise him anymore. Yet somehow, it still did. "That's not why I agreed to this," Sean said. Christian's smile didn't waver. "Of course not. You're here to save the world, one cleft palate at a time. I'm here to make sure you don't give away our services to every sob story that walks through the door." The plane dropped suddenly, then stabilized. Sean's stomach lurched along with it. Beyond the window, green mountains and valleys stretched beneath them, lush and vibrant in ways Miami never was. Somewhere down there was the small city of San Miguel, where they'd spend the next 2 weeks working at a temporary surgical clinic run by International Medical Relief. It had been Sean's idea, a chance to use their skills for more than tummy tucks and breast augmentations. Christian had resisted until Sean pointed out the publicity benefits and the convenient timing, just after Christian's latest relationship had exploded spectacularly. "You know," Sean said, "we could actually do some good here." Christian turned to the window. "We do plenty of good in Miami. We make people happy with themselves. We make rich people happier with their already privileged lives." "Since when did that become a crime?" Christian asked. "Last I checked, those rich people's checks are what keep our practice running, our staff paid, and our lifestyles intact." Sean didn't answer. The arguments were old, worn smooth like river stones from years of the same conflict. Sean wanting meaning, Christian wanting success, both of them compromising enough to maintain their partnership while quietly resenting the concessions. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their descent into San Miguel. Sean felt a flutter of anticipation beneath his travel fatigue. 2 weeks away from the pressures of McNamara, Troy. 2 weeks of surgery that actually made a difference in people's lives. Christian must have read his expression. Just remember, partner, 2 weeks. Then it's back to the real world. Sean nodded, but as the small airport came into view below them, he couldn't help wondering, what if this was the real world, and the luxury of their Miami practice was the illusion? The clinic occupied what had once been a small private hospital, now run down but functional. When their driver deposited them at the entrance, Christian eyed the peeling paint and cracked concrete with thinly veiled dismay. "Home sweet home," he muttered, hoisting his designer luggage. A tall woman with steel grey hair pulled into a severe bun approached them with a brisk stride. "Dr. McNamara?" "Dr. Troy? I'm Dr. Helen Vega, clinic director. Welcome to San Miguel." Her handshake was firm, her assessment of them swift and clinical. Christian turned on his charm instantly, but Dr. Vega seemed immune, her professional smile never reaching her eyes. "We've prepared a schedule for you both," she said, leading them through double doors into a bustling corridor. Medical staff in scrubs hurried past, many nodding respectfully to Dr. Vega. "You'll be handling reconstructive cases primarily. Burns, congenital deformities, traumatic injuries. Our specialty is cosmetic surgery," Christian interjected smoothly, "though of course we're trained in reconstructive procedures." Helen paused, giving him a measured look. "I'm aware of your practice's focus, Dr. Troy. I reviewed your surgical records, but here we need doctors who can help patients who truly need medical intervention, not elective enhancements." Sean suppressed a smile at Christian's momentarily speechless expression. Dr. Vega continued walking, pointing out different areas of the clinic. "You'll be sharing quarters with our other visiting surgeons," she said, gesturing to a corridor. "Communal bathrooms, I'm afraid. The OR schedule begins at 7 a.m. sharp. We have a backlog of cases, so we'll be putting you to work immediately." Christian leaned toward Sean. "I have a feeling our thread count just dropped dramatically." "You'll survive," Sean murmured back. They were shown to a sparse room with 2 narrow beds, a shared dresser, and little else. Christian stood in the doorway, his expression suggesting he'd been asked to sleep in a stable. "I can recommend a hotel in the city centre if this doesn't meet your standards, Dr. Troy," she said dryly, "though the commute will cut into your surgery time." "This is fine," Sean answered before Christian could respond. "We appreciate the accommodation." After Helen left them to settle in, Christian tossed his bag onto one of the beds with a theatrical sigh. "Remind me again why we couldn't have volunteered somewhere with at least a 4-star hotel. Doctors Without Borders goes to the south of France sometimes, don't they?" Sean began unpacking his medical books. Because this clinic needed experienced plastic surgeons, and the waiting list for procedures is over a year long. Meanwhile, our paying clients in Miami are being referred to competitors. Linda's handling the schedule. 2 weeks won't kill the practice. Christian flopped onto his bed, wincing at its firmness. "Says you. I've spent 20 years building a reputation as Miami's premier plastic surgeon. Out of sight, out of mind in this business." Sean paused, studying his friend. Behind the complaints, he could sense something else. The restlessness that always seemed to drive Christian, as if he were perpetually running from something he couldn't name. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Sean said quietly, taking a step back. remembering why we became doctors in the first place. Christian's expression softened momentarily. Speak for yourself. I became a doctor for the money and the women. But they both knew it wasn't entirely true. There had been idealism once, even in Christian, buried deep perhaps, but it had existed. Come on, Sean said. Let's go review tomorrow's cases. You can complain about the accommodations later. The first 3 days passed in a blur of surgeries. Despite his initial reluctance, Christian worked with his customary precision and focus. Sean watched him close a cleft palate on a 6-month-old with the same care he might have used on a wealthy socialite's facelift. They worked well together, as they always had. Whatever their personal differences, in the operating room they functioned like two halves of a single surgeon, anticipating each other's needs, communicating with minimal words. On the 4th morning, Dr. Vega approached them at breakfast in the clinic's small cafeteria. I have a special case I'd like you both to evaluate, she said, sliding a medical file across the table. Lucia Mendez, 22 years old, facial scarring from a house fire 3 years ago. Sean opened the file and felt Christian lean in beside him. The photographs showed extensive damage, burn scars covering nearly the entire left side of a young woman's face, pulling her features into a permanent grimace, the eyelid unable to close fully. Previous surgeries? Christian asked, immediately professional. 2 attempts by a local surgeon, but he lacked the specialized training. She needs comprehensive scar revision, possibly tissue expansion, maybe even a facial flap procedure. Sean studied the images more closely. The tissue damage is severe. This would require multiple surgeries, even in Miami. I'm aware, she replied. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't even consider it for our temporary clinic. But Lucia's case is complicated. She was a promising medical student before the accident. Now she's unable to continue her studies because of both physical limitations and, she paused, social factors. People are cruel about facial differences, Sean said quietly. Especially in traditional communities, Dr. Vega agreed. She's essentially become a recluse. With your expertise in facial reconstruction, you might be able to give her enough improvement to resume her life. Christian was examining the surgical notes with focused intensity that Sean recognized. His partner was already mentally planning the procedure, seeing the potential beneath the damage. We'd need to stage this, Christian said. Initial scar revision, then reassess for secondary procedures. Sean nodded. And we'd only be here for the first stage. Dr. Vega spread her hands. I can arrange for her to travel to Miami for follow-up surgeries if necessary. Her family has some resources, and there are charitable foundations that might help. Sean and Christian exchanged a glance, a silent communication born of years working together. We'd want to meet her first, Sean said. Of course. She's coming in this afternoon. I'll arrange a consultation, she assured. After Dr. Vega left, Christian sipped his coffee thoughtfully. This case could be interesting. Interesting? Sean raised an eyebrow. That's not usually your criterion for taking a case. Christian shrugged. Professional challenge. The kind of reconstruction that would make a good journal article. Sean knew better than to call out Christian's attempt to disguise his genuine interest as professional ambition. It would be good to help her, he replied simply. Always the humanitarian. Christian's tone was teasing, but not unkind. Just remember, we've got a practice to run when we get back. We can't fill our schedule with charity cases, no matter how deserving. It was an old argument between them, the balance between their practice as a business and medicine as a calling. Sean had learned to choose his battles. One step at a time, he said. Let's meet Lucia first. Lucia Mendez sat rigidly in the consultation room, her dark hair arranged to fall forward, partially concealing the left side of her face. Despite this attempt at hiding, the extent of her scarring was evident. The skin pulled tight and glossy across her cheekbone. The left corner of her mouth dragged downward in a permanent frown. Christian watched as Sean introduced them both, noting his partner's gentle approach. Sean had always been better at this part, the human connection. Christian preferred the precision of the surgery itself, the puzzle of restructuring flesh and bone. Can you tell us what you're hoping for, Lucia? Sean asked after the preliminaries. The young woman raised her eyes, intelligent and wary. I know you cannot make me beautiful again, Dr. McNamara. I am not a fool. No one suggested you were, Christian said, finding himself drawn into the conversation despite his usual professional detachment. I want to walk in public without children crying, she continued. I want to return to medical school without being the subject of whispers and stares. I want. She touched her frozen left eyelid. I want to blink properly again. Christian leaned forward. Your eyelid correction is straightforward. The facial contracture can be addressed with Z-plasty and possibly tissue expansion. With proper technique, we can significantly improve both function and appearance. Her gaze shifted to him, assessing. You are very confident, Dr. Troy. I'm very good, he replied without hesitation. Unexpectedly, she smiled, a lopsided expression due to her scarring but genuine. Good. I did not come for pity. I came for skill. Christian felt an unwelcome surge of admiration. Most patients either fawned over him or approached with entitlement. Lucia's clear-eyed pragmatism was refreshing. Sean outlined the potential surgical plan, explaining the limitations of what they could accomplish in a single procedure. Lucia listened attentively, asking occasional questions that revealed her medical knowledge. You said you were in medical school, Christian asked during a pause. 3rd year, she replied. I wanted to be a surgeon. And now? Her good eye narrowed slightly. Still a surgeon, Dr. Troy. The fire changed my face, not my ambition. Christian nodded, respecting her determination, even as he recognized the obstacles she would face. Medicine, for all its supposed enlightenment, could be cruelly appearance-conscious, particularly for women. Well, Sean concluded, we'll do everything we can to help you get back on that path. After Lucia left, Christian reviewed her scans again. We should use alloderm for part of the reconstruction. The clinic probably doesn't stock it. Sean looked surprised. That's expensive. It's effective. I'll call Linda, have her ship some overnight. We can bill it to our practice. Sean studied him with that knowing expression Christian sometimes found irritating. That's generous of you. Dr. Troy shrugged. It's a professional courtesy to a future colleague. Besides, if she completes her medical training, she might refer patients someday. They both knew it was a thin justification for an uncharacteristic act of generosity, but he didn't press the issue, leaving Christian grateful. The last thing he needed was an analysis of his motives. Let's schedule her for day after tomorrow, Christian said. I want to review some articles on facial burn reconstruction tonight. I've got some relevant chapters in that textbook I brought, Sean offered. Christian suppressed a smile. Of course, Sean had packed textbooks for a volunteer mission. It was so typically him. Prepared, conscientious, always striving to do better. Sometimes Dr. Troy envied that clarity of purpose. His own driving ambitions were more complicated, tangled with the need for validation he'd never fully shaken despite all his success. Great, he said simply. Let's make sure we give her our best work. Dr. McNamara found himself unexpectedly comfortable in the rhythm of the clinic. Without the pressures of running a business, he could focus entirely on the medicine. Each day brought patients with genuine needs, children with cleft palates, young men with injuries from accidents, women with congenital deformities they'd lived with their entire lives. In Miami, he was accustomed to patients bringing magazine clippings of celebrities demanding perfection. Here, patients wept with gratitude over improvements that would have been considered substandard in his regular practice. The simplicity of the accommodations, which had initially seemed like a hardship, now felt oddly liberating. Stripped of luxury, Sean found himself sleeping better than he had in months, free from the constant low-grade anxiety that had become his normal state back home. Even Christian seemed affected by their surroundings, though he'd never admit it. Sean noticed his partner spending extra time with patients, explaining procedures carefully, despite language barriers, sometimes sitting quietly with nervous family members in the recovery area. The night before Lucia's surgery, Sean found Christian at a small desk in their shared room, surrounded by medical journals and sketched surgical plans. "You're taking this case seriously," Sean observed, setting down a cup of coffee beside his friend. Christian didn't look up from his notes. "It's a complex reconstruction. The vascular supply to those scarred areas will be tricky." Sean sat on his bed, watching Christian work. There was something about seeing his partner like this, focused, dedicated, all pretense stripped away, that reminded Sean why they'd become friends in the first place, all those years ago in medical school. "I've been thinking," Sean said carefully. "Dangerous pastime," Christian murmured, still absorbed in his notes. "About the practice, about the kind of work we do." This got his attention. Christian looked up, wariness crossing his features. "What about it? What if we incorporated more of this type of work? Reconstructive cases, pro bono surgeries for people who really need them." Christian sighed, setting down his pen. Here we go again. Sean McNamara's periodic crisis of conscience. "It's not a crisis," he insisted. "It's an opportunity. We have the skills to make real differences in people's lives, not just reshaping what's already acceptable into some magazine-perfect ideal. Our magazine-perfect ideals pay for the building, the staff, the equipment," Christian countered. "You want to do charity work? Fine. We can set aside one day a month, but the core business remains cosmetic." Sean felt a familiar frustration rise. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm talking about shifting our focus, becoming known for reconstructive excellence alongside our cosmetic work. Cases like Lucia's. Lucia is an exception, Christian interrupted. An interesting surgical challenge. Don't make her into some symbol of a new direction. Why not? We both know you've been more engaged with her case than any facelift or rhinoplasty in months. Christian's expression hardened. Because it's a complex technical challenge, not because I'm having some mid-career epiphany about the meaning of medicine. Maybe you should, Sean said quietly. We're not getting any younger, Christian. At some point, don't you want your work to mean something beyond making the wealthy more beautiful? My work means exactly what I want it to mean, Christian snapped. Financial security, respect, freedom. If you're having existential doubts about your career choices, that's your problem, not mine. The room fell silent. Sean recognized the defensive posture, Christian's reflexive rejection of anything that threatened the carefully constructed persona he'd built. Fine, Sean said eventually. Just a thought? Christian turned back to his notes, but the focused calm of earlier had vanished. His movements were sharp, irritated. We should get some sleep, Sean suggested after a few minutes of strained silence. Big surgery tomorrow. Christian nodded without looking up. I'll be done in a minute. Sean lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The conversation had gone exactly as he'd expected, yet he still felt disappointed. Sometimes he wondered if the gulf between his vision and Christian's would eventually become too wide to bridge. From the corner of his eye, he saw Christian absently touch his own face, a gesture Sean had noticed occasionally over the years. Christian's fingers traced an invisible line along his jawline, a phantom reminder of his own insecurities, the very motivations that had drawn him to plastic surgery in the first place. In that moment, Sean understood something he'd always known, but never fully acknowledged. Christian's dedication to aesthetic perfection wasn't just business pragmatism. It was personal, rooted in his friend's deep-seated belief that appearance determined worth. A belief Christian had never fully escaped, despite his success. How could Sean expect Christian to embrace a different vision of their practice when his partner's entire identity was built around transforming imperfection into beauty? With that realization, Sean felt both closer to understanding his friend and further from changing his mind. Lucia's surgery took nearly 6 hours. Christian and Sean worked in tandem, releasing contractures, repositioning tissue, carefully reconstructing her eyelid to restore proper function. The aloe derm that they'd ordered arrived just in time, providing the dermal matrix they needed for part of the reconstruction. When they finally stepped back from the operating table, both were exhausted, but satisfied. The improvement was significant, not miraculous, but substantial. Her eyelid would close properly now, the tension across her cheek released, the corner of her mouth freed from its downward pull. Good work, Sean said as they scrubbed out. Christian nodded, flexing his fingers to release the stiffness from hours of delicate work. She'll need at least 2 more procedures to address the remaining scarring, but this is a solid start. We can arrange for her to come to Miami in a few months, once this has healed. Christian gave Sean a sharp look. Pro bono? We could use the practice's charitable foundation, which already has a waiting list. Sean met his partner's gaze steadily. She's a medical student, Christian. A future colleague. After a moment, Christian shrugged. Fine. But I'm doing the follow-up surgeries. I want to see this through. The admission of personal investment was unusual for Christian, and Sean knew better than to comment on it. Instead, he simply nodded. Of course. Later, in the recovery area, they explained to Lucia what they'd accomplished and what still remained to be done. Despite the fresh bandages and post-surgical swelling, she was alert and attentive. You will need to be patient, Christian told her. The initial healing will take weeks, and the final results won't be apparent for months. I understand, she said. I have been patient for 3 years. We'd like to continue your treatment in Miami, Sean explained, once you've healed from this procedure. Lucia's good eye widened. I cannot afford to come to your clinic in Miami, Dr. McNamara. It's been taken care of, Christian said dismissively. Professional courtesy. She studied them both carefully. Why would you do this for me? Christian seemed uncomfortable with the direct question. Sean stepped in smoothly. Because you deserve the chance to become the doctor you want to be. But Lucia's gaze remained on Christian, as if sensing he was the one who needed convincing. And you, Dr. Troy? Why would you help me? Christian met her eyes with uncharacteristic directness. Because I recognize determination when I see it. The medical profession needs more surgeons who understand what it means to be on the other side of the scalpel. Lucia nodded slowly, a silent understanding passing between them. Then I will come to Miami when it is time. After they left her to rest, Christian was quiet, his usual post-operative satisfaction muted by something Sean couldn't quite identify. Everything okay? Sean asked as they walked back to their quarters. Christian shrugged. Just tired. It was a long surgery. Sean knew his friend well enough to recognize when something had struck a nerve. Christian Troy's carefully maintained facade had cracks, and occasionally, rarely, Sean caught glimpses of the vulnerability beneath. Today had been one of those moments. Something about Lucia's case, her determination to reclaim her life despite her scars, had resonated with Christian in ways he wasn't comfortable acknowledging. Sean let it go, knowing from experience that pushing Christian to examine his feelings usually resulted in stronger defenses, not insights. Instead, he simply said, "We did good work today." After a moment, Christian nodded. "Yes, we did. It was enough, for now." The remaining days at the clinic passed quickly. Sean and Christian operated on a steady stream of patients, cleft palates, hand deformities, and congenital anomalies. Between surgeries, they checked on Lucia, whose recovery was proceeding well despite the extensive nature of her procedure. On their second to last evening, Dr. Vega invited them to dinner at her home, along with several other visiting doctors. The night was warm, the food simple but delicious, and the conversation centered around cases and techniques rather than the usual social posturing that characterized Miami medical gatherings. Christian, to Sean's surprise, seemed to be enjoying himself. He was engaged in a spirited discussion with a reconstructive surgeon from Chicago about innovative flap techniques, gesturing animatedly with his glass of local wine. Dr. Vega settled into a chair beside Sean on the small patio. "Your partner is not what I expected," she observed. Sean raised an eyebrow. "What did you expect?" "From his reputation. A self-absorbed cosmetic surgeon interested only in celebrity clients and experimental techniques that would enhance his profile." Sean couldn't help but laugh. "That's not entirely inaccurate." "Perhaps not in Miami," she conceded. "But here, he has shown genuine commitment to the patients, particularly Lucia Mendez." "Christian is a complex person," Sean said, watching his friend across the patio. "He cultivates certain perceptions, but beneath that is a talented surgeon who cares more than he wants to admit." Dr. Vega finished for him. Sean nodded. "Something like that." "And you?" she asked. "What will you take from this experience, Dr. McNamara?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on the work, on observing Christian's reactions, that he hadn't fully processed his own. "Perspective, I suppose," he said finally. "A reminder of why I became a doctor in the first place." Helen studied him thoughtfully. "Many surgeons who visit us have similar reflections. They return to their practices full of renewed purpose, determined to change their approach." She paused. "Few actually do." "You sound skeptical." "Realistic," she corrected. "It is easy to have epiphanies in a different environment. Harder to maintain them when you return to the pressures and patterns of your regular life." Sean considered this. "You think nothing changes?" "I think change requires more than good intentions. It requires concrete decisions, sometimes difficult ones." She glanced toward Christian. "And when those decisions involve others, particularly those who may not share your epiphany." She left the thought unfinished, but Sean understood her point. His vision for a different kind of practice wouldn't matter if he couldn't bring Christian along, and that had always been the fundamental challenge. Later that night, as they walked back to the clinic under a canopy of stars, brighter than any visible in Miami's light-polluted sky, Sean found himself unusually contemplative. "Penny for your thoughts, partner," Christian said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Just thinking about what happens when we go back." Christian gave him a sidelong glance. "Still on that change of direction kick?" "It's not a kick," Sean said. "It's a legitimate question about the future of our practice." "Our very successful practice," his partner reminded him. "Financially successful," Sean agreed. "But is that enough?" Christian stopped walking, turning to face Sean directly. In the moonlight, his expression was difficult to read. "What do you want? Really? Because if you're having a midlife crisis about the meaning of your career, just say it plainly instead of dancing around it." The directness of the question caught Sean off guard. He'd expected Christian's usual deflection, not this frontal challenge. "I want our work to matter more," he said finally. "I want to use our skills for more than vanity cases. I want..." He gestured vaguely back toward the clinic. "Some of this. Not all of it, but some." Dr. Troy was quiet for a long moment. "And if I don't share that vision?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. It wasn't just about a business disagreement. It was about the partnership that had defined both their professional lives for 2 decades. "I don't know," Sean admitted. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Christian resumed walking, his pace slower now. Remember our first year in practice? That dump of an office we could barely afford. Sean smiled at the memory. The reception desk we bought second-hand that always wobbled. And the air conditioning that only worked when it felt like it, Christian added. We've come a long way from there. We have, Sean agreed. But sometimes I wonder if we've lost something along the way. Christian's laugh was soft but without humor. You always were the idealist. And you were always the pragmatist, Sean countered. Maybe that's why we worked so well together. Worked? Christian caught the past tense. Are you ending our partnership, Sean? The question was direct, almost confrontational, but Sean heard the uncertainty beneath it, a rare vulnerability from his usually confident friend. No, he said firmly. I'm suggesting we evolve it. Find a balance that works for both of us. Christian didn't respond immediately. When they reached the clinic, he paused at the entrance, looking back toward the town and the mountains beyond. Let me think about it, he said finally. Not just an automatic number. Actual consideration. That's all I can offer right now. Coming from Christian, it was a significant concession. Sean nodded, knowing better than to push for more. Fair enough. As they entered the building, Sean realized that Dr. Vega had been right. Epiphanies were easier than change. The real test would come when they returned to Miami, to the pressures and expectations of the life they'd built. But for the first time in years, he felt a cautious hope that change might actually be possible. Their last day at the clinic was devoted to follow-up appointments, checking on recent surgical patients before transferring their care back to the regular staff. Lucia was among them, her bandages reduced. The initial swelling subsided enough to reveal the improvements from the surgery. Christian examined her carefully, professionally, but Sean noticed the extra time he took explaining the healing process, the exercises she should do to maintain mobility in her reconstructed eyelid. We'll see you in Miami in 3 months, Dr. Troy told her, making notes in her chart. By then, this will have healed enough for us to address the remaining issues. Dr. Vega told me what you are doing, Lucia said, covering the costs through your foundation. I don't know how to thank you. Christian looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. Just finished medical school. That's thanks enough. I will, she promised. And perhaps someday I can work alongside surgeons like you, helping others as you have helped me. After she left, Christian was quieter than usual, methodically completing his documentation without his customary complaints about paperwork. She's going to do well, Dr. McNamara observed. Christian nodded. She has the right temperament for a surgeon. Determined, resilient. You made a difference for her. A real difference. Christian glanced up, his expression unreadable. We made a difference. The correction was minor but meaningful, a rare acknowledgement of their shared accomplishment rather than Christian's usual focus on individual achievement. That evening, they attended a small farewell gathering with the clinic staff. There were speeches, expressions of gratitude, promises to return. Sean found himself genuinely moved by the experience, by the connections they'd formed in just 2 short weeks. Christian, too, seemed affected, though he maintained his usual composed exterior. Only Sean, who knew him better than anyone, could see the subtle signs of emotional impact, the slight tension in his jaw, the way he lingered in conversations rather than moving efficiently through the room as he typically would at social functions. Later, as they packed their belongings in preparation for the early morning departure, the quiet between them felt thick with unspoken thoughts. "I've been thinking about what you said." Christian finally broke the silence. "About the practice." Sean paused in his methodical packing. "And?" Christian sat on the edge of his bed, unusually reflective. "You know why I went into plastic surgery?" "For the money and the women." Sean quoted Christian's oft-repeated claim. "Or so you always said." A faint smile crossed Christian's face. That was part of it, but not all. He hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. "I wanted to fix things. People. Make them better, more acceptable." Sean sat down opposite him, recognizing the rare moment of genuine disclosure. "When I was a kid," Christian continued, "after my mother left, after everything with my adoptive father, I used to stand in front of the mirror and imagine changing my face, becoming someone else, someone better." The admission hung in the air between them. Sean knew pieces of Christian's troubled childhood, but his friend rarely spoke of it directly. "Plastic surgery gave me control," Christian admitted. "The ability to reshape reality, to create beauty where there was deformity or just ordinariness, to make people feel like they mattered. They matter regardless of how they look," Sean said gently. Dr. Troy's laugh was soft and without humor. "That's what people say. But we both know the world doesn't work that way. Beauty opens doors. It creates opportunities. It shields you from certain kinds of pain." "Not all pain," Sean pointed out. "No," he agreed. "Not all." The admission felt significant, an acknowledgement of the limitations of their work, of the surface-level transformations that couldn't heal deeper wounds. "So, what are you saying?" Sean asked after a moment. Christian met his gaze directly. "I'm saying, I understand why this work matters to you. Cases like Lucia's. I felt it too, whether I wanted to admit it or not." Sean looked up, his eyes softening as Christian went on. "But I'm also saying that our practice as it exists, the work we do for people who want to change their appearance for whatever reason, that matters too. It's valid. It's worthwhile." "I never said it wasn't," he replied. "You implied it," Christian countered. "All this talk about meaningful work, as if what we've built together is somehow shallow or insufficient." Sean considered this. Perhaps he had been dismissive of their regular practice in his enthusiasm for change. "That wasn't my intention," he said. "I just think there's room for both." Dr. Troy nodded slowly. "Maybe there is." He paused. "I've been running some numbers in my head. If we dedicated 1 day a week to reconstructive cases, pro bono or reduced fee, we could still maintain our cosmetic practice without significant financial impact." The proposal was so unexpected that Sean momentarily didn't know how to respond. "You're serious?" Don't look so shocked, Christian said dryly. I'm capable of compromise. Rarely, in my experience, Sean couldn't help but retort. Christian shrugged. People change. Do they? Sean asked, genuinely curious about what had prompted this shift. Christian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Working here, seeing cases like Lucia's, it reminded me of something I think I'd forgotten along the way. What's that? That beneath all the business considerations, the marketing, the luxury of our practice, we're still doctors. We still have the power to heal, not just enhance. The simple truth of the statement resonated between them. 1 day a week, Sean repeated, testing the idea. For reconstructive cases. To start, Christian qualified. We evaluate after 6 months, see if it's sustainable. It was classic Christian, even in concession, establishing parameters, maintaining control. But it was also a genuine step towards Sean's vision, more than he'd honestly expected. I think that's fair, Sean said. A good compromise. Christian nodded, then returned to his packing with renewed focus, as if eager to move past the moment of vulnerability. Good. Now can we finish this and get some sleep? That excuse for an airplane leaves at an ungodly hour tomorrow. Sean smiled, recognizing the deflection but accepting it. They'd made progress, real progress. The details could be worked out back in Miami. As he continued packing, he reflected on their 2 weeks in Guatemala, the patients they'd helped, the perspective they'd gained, the unexpected evolution in their partnership. Whatever challenges awaited them back home, they'd face them with a renewed understanding of each other and the work that had brought them together in the first place. That night, Sean slept soundly for the first time in months, free from the restlessness that had plagued him before their trip. Beside him, Christian too seemed peaceful, the usual tension in his features softened in sleep. Tomorrow, they would return to Miami, to the practice they'd built together. But they would return changed, not dramatically, not completely, but meaningfully, carrying with them the lessons of San Miguel, the faces of patients like Lucia, and a shared vision of what their partnership could become. The scars they treated would heal. The scars they carried within themselves might never disappear completely. But perhaps, Sean thought as he drifted towards sleep, they could all learn to wear their scars with greater purpose, choosing what those marks meant, rather than being defined by them. Yet, in that acceptance, might lie the greatest transformation of all.